Hello friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Teachable Tuesday series. I am your host Victoria, and this week we are going to be talking about the Communion of Saints. Now this video is going to look different than other videos because I actually did a presentation at my college on the Communion of Saints for one of my classes. So for this week's lesson, we're going to look at a clip from that video. I'll add a few remarks at the end and then give you the challenge. So watch it right here. And the Catechism has a very beautiful definition of what the Communion of Saints is. So in paragraph 962, it says that we believe in the communion of all the faithful of Christ, those who are pilgrims on earth, the dead who are being purified, and the blessed in heaven, all together forming one church. And we believe that in this communion, the merciful love of God and His saints is always attentive to our prayers. So it's a pretty packed definition, but I wanted to read it in full because there's just so much beauty to be unveiled and to be unpacked here. So the first part that we discussed here is that there are those who are pilgrims on earth as part of the Communion of Saints. And what we call that is the church militant. And so basically that's just us here on earth who are still running the race towards heaven. You know, life is a journey, life is a pilgrimage, and we're making our way towards our eternal home because this is not our home. Our home is actually in heaven with all the angels and saints and with the Lord Himself. So the second part of the definition is that there are the dead who are being purified. And the dead who are being purified are all those holy souls in purgatory. And we call them the church suffering. Now I know that's kind of a funny term because we're still on earth and we're suffering a lot. You know, we're trying to run that race, trying to fight that good fight, and it's hard, and we suffer for it. But you know what? Think about it this way. I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but when I really delved into this idea, it just was so beautiful to me. When we die, we see the Lord face to face, regardless of where we end up, which is either heaven or hell or purgatory. We see Him face to face. And He satisfies every single longing of our heart. And when you see Him face to face, all you want, if your heart is for Him, your heart is seeking Him, you just want to be united to Him. But on this earth, you know, it's a sinful place, and we are sinful people, and we fall sometimes. And sometimes we just have those earthly attachments still stuck to us, and the remnants of sin on our souls when we die. That's just the reality of the situation. And we desire to be united with the Lord, and so do the holy souls in purgatory. They ache to be united with Him, and that's why we rightfully call them the church suffering. Now the last part of this definition talks about the blessed in heaven, and as you could probably already guess, that refers to the saints in heaven. These are the individuals who have run the race set before them and who have received their heavenly glory. And that's why they're so blessed, because they are viewing the beatific vision, which is just a fancy term for they're with the Lord, and they can see Him face to face. Now there's a common misconception with all of this that all of these three states of the church, it sounds like they're all separate. So why do we call it a communion of saints? There is a key element here, that there is that deep communion and unity in between them. And this communion and unity as a body comes from us being in communion with Christ as our head. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it talks about Jesus being the head of the body. And we are part of His body because we are the body of Christ. So in other words, we're all united in the body of Christ for two reasons. The first reason is because we're all baptized Christians. Or most of us, I think, in here are already baptized. And if you're not and you'd be interested in being baptized, we would love for you to join our church in this way. So that's one way, through baptism. The second way is through Holy Communion, the sacrifice of the Mass. In the Eucharist, this is the closest that we will ever be in communion with the saints and with those who have gone before us. And this is where our communion and our unity really, really comes from. So another point that I want to make here, a very important point, is that we as the church militant, we're not alone in our pursuit of holiness here on earth, even though it kind of feels like it sometimes. Now, I just want to invite you to just close your eyes for a second. I'm going to lead you through this beautiful image that I received a few days ago. So picture this. You find yourself crouched down at the starting line of a 105-meter dash. Sweat is just beating down your face, and your adrenaline is pumping wildly. You can feel your heart beating beneath your chest, pulsing in your ears. You're in the middle of this huge stadium, and you can hear the roar and the thunder of the crowd just reverberating around you. You hear cheering, and you listen a little closer and you realize they're cheering your name. They are cheering you on as you embark on the most important race of your life. Now I invite you to open your eyes back up, brothers and sisters. This is a beautiful and striking image of the communion of saints and the faithful who have reached heaven. Like I mentioned earlier before, the idea of living out our faith as though we were in a race comes right out of Hebrews 12. And I'm going to read that passage to you right now because it is really just so beautiful. And we want to appreciate it in full here. Now listen to this and see how it relates to the image I just described. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising his shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. What a beautiful image this is, brothers and sisters. This great cloud of witnesses that is described in this passage, these are the saints in heaven. They're the ones who have followed in the footsteps of Christ faithfully. They're the ones who kept their eyes fixed on him and persevered in running the race before them. They didn't give up even for a moment, and even if they faltered, they got right back up again. Even if they fell over that hurdle, they continued on, never leaving their eyes off of Jesus. And so guys, we are not alone also in this race because our brothers and sisters in heaven are cheering us on. And even better than being spectators, they are like our coaches in the faith. Now, of course, Jesus is like the head coach. Like, he's the one who we want to live our lives after. But the saints are also coaches in the sense that they want what's best for us, and they encourage us, and they push us sometimes when we don't want to be pushed towards sainthood. And whether it's, through their prayers for us at the right hand of God, or through the spiritual writings that they've left us, or the devotions, or just the legacy of a life lived in holiness, these are ways that the saints coach us in the faith and encourage us along the way. And like I said before, they're constantly interceding for us at the throne room of God. And they rejoice with us when we have our victories. And they even call us on sometimes when we fall short. I remember so many times reading these different saint books and seeing how it directly related to my life and thinking, I don't really want to change my life in this way. But this saint did. And look at them now, they're in heaven. So that should encourage me along the race as well. And this is what we mean to say when the Catechism talks about the saints are always attentive to our prayers. I hope you found that video to be really interesting and really insightful. I really enjoyed learning so much about the communion of saints and what the church has to teach on this topic. Something else that I just want to make mention of, that I didn't make mention of in this particular clip, is the call to holiness that we all have, right? So some people think that holiness is for those who are called to the priesthood or religious life, and that it's just not for lay people. Holiness is for them, but it's not for me. But the truth is, holiness is for everyone. The church actually has a term for this. It's called the universal call to holiness, which means no matter what vocation you have in life, you are still called to that same level of holiness as everybody else. So I hope you really enjoyed this clip. Let me give you the challenge for the week. As you can imagine, it's going to involve the saints. So the challenge of this week is to look up a new saint friend. Maybe there's a saint that you've heard about, maybe from your grandma or your mom, or just a saint that you've heard about that you want to know more about. And I encourage you to go look them up. and learn more about their lives, and then ask for their intercession this week. The saints are here as our older brothers and sisters in the faith who are praying for us and encouraging us on the road to heaven. So it would be good for us to make friends with them now before we get there. That's all the time we have for this week, but I will see you next week right back here for next week's installment of the Teachable Tuesday series. Bye guys!